It is 11:47 at night. You are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and your brain has decided that right now, in the dark, under the blanket, is the perfect time to replay every awkward conversation you had in 2019. The meeting you fumbled. The text you sent that came out wrong. The thing you said at dinner 6 months ago that you are still not sure landed okay. And then just when you think the replay might stop, your brain smoothly transitions into the future. Everything you haven't done yet. Everything that could go wrong tomorrow. The email you forgot to send, the decision you still haven't made, the version of yourself you were supposed to be by now. Sound familiar? Of course it does, because this is happening to millions of people every single night. And here's the part that nobody is telling you. This is not a willpower problem. It is not anxiety in the clinical sense, and it is definitely not something you can think your way out of. The harder you try to stop thinking, the louder the thoughts get. That is not a coincidence. That is basic neuroscience. And once you understand exactly why your brain does this, the fix becomes almost embarrassingly simple. Stay with me through the third habit I am going to give you today. That is the one most people skip because it sounds too easy. And it is the one that actually rewires the loop at the source. Let's go. First, you need to understand what is actually happening inside your skull when the overthinking spiral starts. Because most people think the problem is that they have too many thoughts. That is not the problem. The real problem is that your brain does not know it is safe. Here is the science. During the day, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, organized, decision-making part of your brain, is running the show. But when you lie down at night, something shifts. Your prefrontal cortex starts to quiet down. Your body begins the process of transitioning into sleep. And in that gap, in that window between being fully awake and falling asleep, your amygdala steps forward. The amygdala is your brain's threat detection center. Its entire job is to scan for danger. And in the absence of the prefrontal cortex keeping it organized, it starts pulling up every unresolved item from the day, every conversation that ended ambiguously, every task that didn't get completed, every interaction where the outcome was uncertain. It is not trying to torture you. It is trying to protect you. It is essentially running a last-minute security check before your brain goes offline for 8 hours. The problem is that modern life gives the amygdala an enormous amount of material to work with. You have spent the entire day bombarded with information, notifications, decisions, social interactions, and incomplete loops. Your brain's inbox is overflowing. And when you lie down in the silence in the dark with no new inputs to process, it starts sorting through the backlog. That is your overthinking spiral. It is not a glitch, it is a feature running at the wrong time. So now the question is, how do you tell your brain the security check is done and everything is safe? And this is where the 20-second habit comes in. Habit number 1, the open loop list. 20 seconds, no pen required. Here is something that will immediately make sense once you hear it. Your brain keeps overthinking unresolved things because it is afraid of forgetting them. The loop stays open because your brain doesn't trust that the information is stored somewhere safe. It keeps replaying the thought not because it enjoys the replay, but because it is terrified that if it stops, the thing will be lost forever. Researchers at Florida State University ran a study on what they called the Zeigarnik effect in relation to sleep. The Zeigarnik effect is the well-documented psychological phenomenon where your brain dedicates more mental resources to incomplete tasks than completed ones. What they found is that the simple act of writing down an unfinished task or even mentally naming it as acknowledged and scheduled reduces the brain's compulsion to keep cycling through it. The brain doesn't need the task to be done. It just needs to know the task is registered somewhere outside of working memory. So here is the habit. Right before you get into bed, spend 20 seconds doing what I call the open loop list. Not a to-do list, not a journal, just a fast, informal brain dump of anything your mind is currently holding open. You can write it down if you want to, even on your phone. But here's the key part. After you name each thing, you say out loud or in your head one of 2 sentences. Either, "This is handled for tonight," or, "I will deal with this tomorrow at a specific time." That is it. You are not solving the problem. You are not processing it emotionally. You are just giving your brain permission to close the file temporarily. You are telling your amygdala, the information is stored, the security check is complete, you can stand down now. Most people who try this notice a difference the very first night, not because it is magic, because it is working directly with the mechanism that was causing the problem in the first place. Habit number 2, The physiological exhale reset. This one takes literally 12 seconds and the science behind it is wild. When your overthinking spiral kicks in at night, your body is not in a neutral state. Your nervous system has already shifted toward mild activation. Your breathing has probably gotten slightly shallower without you noticing. Your jaw might be lightly clenched. Your heart rate is just a tick above where it should be for sleep. And here is the feedback loop nobody talks about. Your brain is reading those physical signals and interpreting them as evidence that something is wrong. Your body is slightly activated, so your brain concludes there must be a threat, so it keeps scanning for the threat, which keeps your body slightly activated. You are stuck in a biological loop that thinking harder cannot break. The only way to interrupt this loop is from the body side, not the mind side. And the single fastest way to signal your nervous system that the threat is over is through a specific breathing pattern that researchers at Stanford have called the physiological sigh. Here is exactly what you do. You take a normal inhale through your nose. Then, without pausing, you take one additional short sniff on top of that first breath, like a small top-up. Your lungs are now more full than they would be in a normal breath. Then you exhale completely and slowly through your mouth. Make the exhale at least twice as long as the combined inhale. Do this twice. That is it. 12 seconds total. What just happened inside your body is not subtle. That extended exhale directly activates your vagus nerve, which is the primary highway of your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and recovery system. Your heart rate drops measurably within seconds. Cortisol, the stress hormone that was quietly keeping your amygdala on alert, begins to fall. The double inhale reinflates small air sacs in your lungs that collapse during shallow, anxious breathing, which improves oxygen exchange almost immediately. You are not meditating. You are not visualizing. You are performing a direct biological override on the stress response that was fueling your overthinking. 2 breaths, 12 seconds. Your nervous system doesn't have the option to ignore it. Do this right after the open loop list, back to back. 20 seconds of naming the open loops, 12 seconds of the physiological sigh. By this point, your brain has been told the files are closed and your body has been told the threat is gone. But there is one more piece, and this is the one most people skip. This is the one that actually changes the pattern over time rather than just managing it tonight. Habit number 3, the cognitive offload anchor. 20 seconds. This one sounds almost too simple. That is why people dismiss it. And that is why their brains are still racing at midnight 6 months later. Here is the problem with most approaches to nighttime overthinking. They try to stop the thoughts by brute force. Don't think about it. Distract yourself, count sheep, put on a podcast. These approaches all have one thing in common. They are trying to occupy the brain while it is still in active mode. And an active brain is always going to fight you. You cannot out-distract a brain that is determined to process something. You will lose that battle every time. The cognitive offload anchor works differently. Instead of fighting the thoughts, you give your brain a single, specific, and deeply boring sensory anchor to return to every time a thought arises. Not a mantra, not a visualization, not a breathing exercise, a physical sensation so ordinary that your thinking brain has nothing to analyze about it. Here is exactly what you do. As you lie in bed, shift all of your awareness to the feeling of weight, your body pressing down into the mattress, the heaviness of your legs, the pressure of the pillow against the back of your head, the weight of the blanket across your chest. Just notice the weight, not the texture, not the temperature, just the simple, boring physical fact of gravity pressing your body down into the surface beneath you. When a thought arises, and thoughts will arise, you do not fight it. You do not tell it to go away. You simply notice it and then return your attention to the weight. That is the entire practice. Return to the weight. This works for a precise neurological reason. Your brain cannot sustain an overthinking spiral without continuous active attention feeding it. The spiral requires you to keep engaging with the thought, analyzing it, worrying about it, following it into the next thought. The moment you redirect attention, even briefly, you cut the fuel supply. The thought doesn't disappear immediately, but it weakens, and each time you return to the anchor, you are strengthening the neural pathway that leads away from the spiral and towards stillness. Over time, with repetition across nights, this becomes automatic. Your brain learns that bed is the place where attention goes to the weight. The spiral doesn't just stop faster, it starts less often. Neuroscientists call this top-down attentional control. And research from the University of California has shown that consistent practice of redirecting attention in this way measurably reduces default mode network activity, which is the brain network responsible for mind wandering, rumination, and self-referential thinking. Now let's talk about why all three of these work together in a sequence and why doing them separately gives you maybe 30% of the benefit. The open loop list targets the cognitive layer, the thoughts that have content, tasks, worries, unresolved situations. It closes the files, so your brain stops actively cycling through them. The physiological sigh targets the biological layer, the nervous system activation that was keeping your amygdala alert and feeding urgency into the thought loops. It resets your body's baseline to a state compatible with sleep. The cognitive offload anchor targets the attentional layer, the habit of mind that keeps pulling focus back toward thought even after the content of the thoughts has been addressed. It trains your brain to redirect automatically. Most people, when they try to stop overthinking at night, only address one layer. They journal, which helps with the cognitive layer but does nothing for the biological activation. They do breathing exercises, which helps the biological layer but doesn't address the unresolved thought content. The sequence works because it moves through all three layers in the right order. You close the files first, you reset the body second, you redirect the attention third. By the time you reach the third step, your brain has far less material to throw at you. There is one more thing I want you to understand before you try this tonight, and this might be the most important thing in this entire video. Your overthinking at night is not a character flaw. It is not a sign that you are broken or that your anxiety is out of control or that you need to fix something fundamental about yourself. It is the predictable result of a brain that is working hard, taking in enormous amounts of information every day and trying to process all of it with insufficient downtime during waking hours. The overthinking is the processing. The problem is not that your brain wants to process. The problem is the timing. Everything we covered today is about giving your brain a better system for processing, so it doesn't have to steal your sleep time to do it. The open loop list gives it a trusted storage system. The physiological side gives it the biological signal to shift out of processing mode. The cognitive offload anchor gives it an alternative to defaulting back to the spiral when it tries to restart. The people who sleep well are not the people who have quieter lives or fewer problems or less to think about. They are the people whose brains have learned, consciously or through lucky habit, that the night shift is over. Tonight, you are going to be one of those people. 20 seconds for the open loop list, 12 seconds for the physiological sigh, and then the weight. Just the weight of your body pressing down, heavy and still and done for the day. Tell me in the comments how long it usually takes for your thoughts to spiral at night. 1 minute? 5 minutes? The second you lie down? I want to know. Drop it below. And if this helped you, or if you know someone who has been lying awake at 11:47 staring at the ceiling wondering why their brain won't stop, send this to them right now before you forget, because the best time to fix this problem is always before the next bad night starts.